different topic. The board also came out with 0.05 as one of the recommendations. Came out with 0.05 as one of the recommendations, and that had a little bit of a reaction from the general public and from the media and groups and everything else. I guess the first question is, why 0.05 from the NTSB's position? What's the basis behind it? And then why the reaction?
So, thanks for letting me talk about the fact that we had 19 recommendations we made. Because you're right, the focus was all about 0.05, and I think a lot of that was just some of the controversy around it. Why did we make the recommendation? It was all about the science and saving lives. And so if you actually look at the scientific data available, we know that when you go from 0.08 to 0.05, lives get saved. That's already been shown when we went from 0.10 to 0.08. Other places, 100 other countries in the world have already gone from 0.08 to 0.05. And they have shown that you can get up to 18% reduced fatalities. So 18% more people alive, basically, if you have a lower BAC. So it falls into what's called general deterrence, because one of the things people debate about is who you're hitting and what's going on. Well, the reality is a lower BAC affects all alcohol-impaired driving. All of it improves. And so we saw that from 0.10 to 0.08, and in the other 100 countries around the world, you see it going from 0.08 to 0.05. There is a general reduction in fatalities and injuries related to alcohol-impaired driving. So our recommendation was all based on data. It was one of 19. Again, that's a general deterrent, and that's because data shows your first drink, impairment begins. And so this idea that there's a safe level really doesn't fit what we know. So starting with that first drink, there's going to be a risk. And we know that by the time you get to 0.08, your risk is over 170% more likely for a fatal accident.
Oh, yeah.
It's huge. Okay, so 0.05 is the place that the world has shown, the data has shown, and there's experience that at 0.05 you're going to save lives. It could be as high as 18%.
Well, and you mentioned a couple of things in that. One is you talked about the general deterrence. And with the 19 recommendations, was NTSB looking at trying to do something, the big picture of general and specific, or how was that designed initially?
I'd like to point out, I think it's actually sort of a 2x2. The first two is we want to go from a general deterrence to specific deterrence. And we have a pyramid, an upside-down pyramid, I think is a great example of what we're going after. And basically, what are the things at the top that are general deterrents that affect everybody? Those are things like the blood alcohol level, high visibility enforcement. There's a whole bunch of things that just sort of bring the numbers down of crashes, lives lost, and injuries. And then you get to a group, though, that are they're tougher. Some are a lot tougher, actually. I was going to say a little, but that's not really appropriate because a lot of these folks are much more difficult. Repeat offenders, high BAC levels. These are folks that need special attention, basically. Mm-hmm. That's where, for example, we raised DWI courts. Okay, these are specific courts that are kind of tailored for these types of repeat offenders and are extremely, again, data, extremely effective at dealing with them. So yes, we've tried to go from general deterrence to specific, and the other two that I was kind of referring to is near-term as well as long-term kinds of interventions.
One more on the 05. There was the reaction, obviously. Either way, was this a bad thing as far as this reaction? It started a discussion of impaired driving and what do we need to do about it?
Yeah, I actually think one of the things the NTSB really did here was help raise the volume. Again, if we're concerned about complacency for 15 years, too many lives have been lost, we need a discussion with loud voices trying to decide what are the bold actions to get something changed here. It's not okay. And so part of the, I think, success of the recommendations and all the discussion about 0.05 is it's now put impaired driving back to the forefront of our national discussion about what we need to do about it. And frankly, again, near and long term, if we get people debating 0.05 for a long time, and they probably will, it took over 20 years for us to go from 0.10 to 0.08. Over 20 years. So this is another long term. If we're going to change, it's going to take a while. But if it gets the discussion going, and some people say, yeah, but they got 18 other recommendations, we ought to look to see what we could change there, those are lives saved. Those are injuries that have been prevented. That is absolutely critical for us to be focusing on everything possible that can be done. I think the other part, which it's been interesting, the .05 created some controversy, and people wanted to come, out whether they're for or against, etc. I think what's interesting is the NTSBs really try to focus on the data and safety. And if you want to see where those data are, we have a great report that you can go, it's online, and people can read about all the data and what it was that was the foundation for the NTSB to make the recommendation. But I think what's important about this is people can debate all they want, and I've looked to see what people have to say, and I'm waiting for the discussion that addresses it from a scientific standpoint or from a safety standpoint. People can do all kinds of other questions about enforcing or social this or is it a right. You can debate all you want, but our recommendation is based on science and safety, trying to save lives and prevent injuries.